Hello, math people. It's Dr. Simmons here, and I'm back with another video. So today, in this video, we will be talking about lines. We will be talking about the slope of lines and how to find the equation of a line, all of the things. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look at our workbook to understand a few things before we start talking about lines, okay? Okay, let's take a look at lines. So, the first thing you want to understand about lines is the slope. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a sign like this on the side of the road. I used to see signs like that all the time in California, but that has to do with the slope. That percentage that you see is a slope. This is like the official definition right here. The tangent of an angle between a given straight line and the x-axis and da 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 da. That's a really complex definition of a slope, right? Very mathy. But how I like to think of a slope is I like to think of it as the steepness of a line. So the steepness of a line, how a line is slanted. Now, when you think about how a line is slanted, there's two things that we think about. We think about the change in y over the change in x. Now, let me tell you what this corresponds to. Have you ever heard of rise over run? So if you think about rise over run, when you rise, that's a change in your y. When you run, that's a change in your x. So the official definition of a slope is a change in y over a change in x. Kind of like the rise over run that you used to learn about in high school or a previous math class, right? So a formula that you need. A formula that you really need when you're dealing with slopes is the slope formula. And the slope formula is rise over run, which we remember, right? Rise over run, which is a change in y over change in x. So the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Change in y over change in x. Now the variable that they use for slope is an m. Don't ask me why they use m. But they use the letter m to represent the slope. So where is this x1, y1, x2, y2? These are 2 points. So if I give you 2 points that are on the xy plane, you can find the slope between those 2 points using this formula. So slope is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Change in y over change in x. So any 2 points on an xy plane, you can find the slope between those 2 points using this formula. So let's keep this in our head, right? Now let's shift over to a blank page. So I'm going to write this formula again. And what I've noticed that if I have a formula that I don't know off the top of my head, if I write it before I use it, it helps me memorize it. So I'm going to give you 2 points. -3, 4, and 5, -1. So 2 random points, right? And I want to find the slope between these 2 points. So I'm going to plug it into the formula. I'm going to let the first point represent x1, y1, and the second point represent x2, y2. And I'm just going to plug it into the slope formula because I want to know what the slope is going to be. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then I just need to simplify at the top, simplify the bottom. So that's -5. That negative becomes positive. So 5 plus 3 is 8. So our slope is -5 over 8. It can't be reduced, so that is our final answer. Let's do another example. Erase, erase, erase. Let's pick 2 other points. How about -10, -5, and 3, 1. So I am gonna do 1 minus -5 over 3 minus -10. The biggest mistake here is these negative signs, okay? If your number is negative, you may have a double negative there. So I have 6 at the top, and then I have 13 at the bottom. And that does not reduce, so your slope is 6 over 13. Just be careful with your signs when you're working with this. So let me give you another point. 5, -4, and 5, 7. I'm going to plug this into the slope formula. So that's going to be y2, which is 7, minus y1, which is -4, over x2, 5, minus x1, 5. So at the top, that turns into 7 plus 4, which is 11, over 5 minus 5 is 0. So wow, you have 11 over 0. If you plug that into the calculator, it's going to say error, because anytime you have 0 in the denominator, it's going to be undefined. You can't do it. 0 can never be in the denominator in the math world. So let's try another one. -6, 7, and 3, -3, 7. So let's use our slope formula. 7 minus 7 at the top, that's y2 minus y1, and -3 minus -6. So at the top I have 0. At the bottom, that's going to be -3 plus 6, which is 3. So 0 divided by 3, that actually gives you 0. You can plug that into the calculator and it will give you an answer, which is 0 versus undefined. So notice the difference between these two. You can't have 0 on the bottom, but you can have 0 at the top. So one of them has a slope of 0, one of them has a slope of undefined. So let's talk about some formulas that we need. There's two formulas or forms that I feel like are necessary when you're dealing with linear equations and trying to find the linear equations. The one that's the most popular is the slope-intercept form. That's the y equals mx plus b. Like, everybody knows y equals mx plus b. They've heard that somewhere. The m represents the slope and the b represents the y-intercept of the line. That's why they call it slope-intercept form, because it involves the slope and it involves the intercept. So if somebody gave me the slope of a line and they gave me the y-intercept, I'm able to write the equation of a line. Okay. Another form that I feel like is useful is the point slope form. Now this one is not as popular, but it's useful. So the form is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. This is called point slope form. The m represents your slope. And then we have this x1, y1. The x1, y1 represents a point on the line. That's why they call this form the point slope form, because it has a point and it has a slope. So if I gave you any random point and I gave you a slope, you're able to plug it into this form and then tell me what the equation of the line will be. So notice the difference between these two. So I'm going to use all these formulas that we just learned, right, to find the equation of a line. So let's see how this works. Let's go back to this, right? So I found the slope. We found the slope earlier. We said the slope was 6 over 13, okay? So let's say if I want to find the equation of the line, right? If somebody gave me 2 points and said, I need you to find the equation of the line, the first thing I would have to do is find the slope. And when I find the slope, I got to use the slope formula. That's that y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We've done that. We found the slope is 6 over 13. Now plug the slope and 1 point into the point slope form. Okay, this y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. If I find the slope, which I already did, and I take 1 point and I plug it into this equation, then I could simplify that to find the equation of the line. So I'm just going to pick one of these points and I'm going to pick the slope and plug it into the equation, right? So let me rewrite it, because you remember what I said earlier. If you write the equation before you use it, then it helps you memorize. So for the slope, I'm going to put 6 over 13. So for the m, I'm going to put 6 over 13. And then the point that I chose was 3, 1. So I'm going to put 3 for x1 and 1 for y1. And then I'm going to simplify. And I challenge you to do the same thing with the other point, because if you did the same thing with the other point, you'll get the same exact answer. So let's simplify here. First thing, I got to get rid of the parentheses. So I'm going to distribute. I'm going to distribute the 6 over 13 inside the parentheses. So 6 over 13x. And then I have to do 6 over 13 times 3. That's going to give you 18 over 13. So minus 18 over 13. And you can check that by looking in your calculator. So now I have to get the y by itself. And to do that, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So y is equal to 6 over 13x. And then negative 18 over 13 plus 1 is going to give you negative 5 over 13. You can check that by checking in the calculator. Now, what did we do here? We didn't put our step 3 here. So we did the first step, which was find the slope. Then we used the point slope form. The last thing I did was I simplified. So you're going to simplify by putting it in y equals mx plus b. So once you plug it into the point slope form, you keep simplifying it until you get the y by itself and you get something that looks like y equals mx plus b. Okay. So let's talk about the steps again, right? Because I went through that pretty quickly. First thing we did, if I give you 2 points, first thing you got to do is find the slope. So you find the slope by using the slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Then you take that slope that you find and 1 point, and then you're going to plug it into the point slope form. So you take that slope and 1 point and plug it into the y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Now from here, we simplify. We're going to simplify until we get the y equals mx plus b. That's the most popular form, y equals mx plus b. Simplify it till you have your equation to look like that. Now, number 4, sometimes you may want to simplify into the standard form. And standard form is just when you have your x and y on one side. Okay, x and y, and usually no fractions are in the standard form. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. Sometimes you want it in that form. I'm not going to say all the time, just sometimes. So let's do an example to bring this all together. So I have, let's use negative 3, 7 and 5, negative 2. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my pen because it's acting crazy. So first thing I'm going to do is use the slope formula so I can figure out what the slope is going to be. So negative 2 minus 7 and 5 minus negative 3. That's going to give you negative 9 over 8 because the negative comes together and make it positive. So negative 9 over 8 is our slope. It does not simplify. I'm going to take that slope in 1 point and I'm going to plug it into the point slope form. Just pick either point. It doesn't matter which one you pick. So I'm going to put the slope. The m is going to be -9/8. And then for the point, I'm going to put -3 for the x1. And I'm going to put 7 for the y1. And let me rewrite it with these changes. So y minus 7 is equal to -9/8, parentheses x. And this turns into +3 because it's x minus -3. Notice that. X minus -3 creates a positive. Now I'm going to simplify. So I distribute the fraction. So y minus 7 is equal to -9/8x, and then minus 27/8. Now I'm trying to get y equals mx plus b. So I add 7 to both sides. And I'm going to combine the 7 with this like term, the one that doesn't have the variable. Y is equal to -9/8x, and then -27/8 plus 7. I put that in the graphing calculator and I got 29/8. And this is my final answer. Notice how it's set up in y equals mx plus b. Now, just for the sake of you understanding how to do standard form, remember standard form is where you have the x and y on the same side. So if I have this, my slope-intercept form, right? If I want to create this to be standard form, first of all, I'm going to get rid of the fractions. So I multiply everything by 8. So I get 8y is equal to 9x plus 29. I just multiply by 8 to get rid of the fraction. Then I move the 9x to the other side because I said I need the x and y to be on the same side. And then you got your standard form. 9x plus 8y equals 29. That's your standard form. That's your x and y being on one side by itself. So it's pretty cool stuff here. I just wanted to show you a few examples. I want to talk about this real quick before I get out of here. So vertical lines can be written in an equation as well. Vertical lines are always going to be x equals something. This is where the slope is undefined. So like anytime you have a vertical line, it's going to be x equals something. But when you have a horizontal line, like this one right here, it's going to be y equals something. So y equals -2, y equals 4. This is where your slope is 0. So any horizontal line is going to be y equals something. I thought I would point that out before I got out of here. And so when you see something like this, like if I was to find the slope, this slope right here is undefined. So the equation of the line will be x equals 4. And like on number 5, if I find the slope is 0. So that's y equals 10. In my next video, I'll talk more about parallel and perpendicular. Okay, math people, we've made it to the end of the video. Thank you for watching with Dr. Simmons. Until next time, bye.